Right, in these notes, you're going to learn about two-step equations, and if you learned about them before, which I do believe you have, then this is just a refresher, but there might be some things that I point out that maybe you hadn't seen before in terms of your previous experience. But the first place we want to start is what exactly is a two-step equation. Right? In one-step equations, it took one operation to get to the final answer. So in a two-step equation, it takes two operations to get a solution. And there is usually a routine through the problems. There's a couple of problems that don't exactly follow the pattern, but for the most part, they do follow a pattern in terms of how you solve them. All right, so the next part of your notes is literally just going to be a bunch of different varieties of examples to show you all the different types of two-step equations that are out there, and to hopefully point out some things along the way that will help you get them right. Right? The first thing before we do any examples, though, when you are solving a two-step equation, you are going to follow PEMDAS in reverse. And what this means is that you normally, when we're doing order of operations, adding and subtracting is the last thing that we do. Well, when we're solving two-step equations, adding and subtracting is going to be the first thing that we do. Right? So you're going to start at the back of PEMDAS and work your way forward. So first step is typically add or subtract. And again, there are a few that don't follow these rules, but for the majority they do. And then your second step, or your last operation, is going to be either to multiply or divide. Okay? Very rarely do you break this order. All right, so all of these examples that I'm going to show you are going to follow this pattern, and you'll notice them as we go through them. All right, for the first one, your standard two-step equation that every single one of you is familiar with in terms of what it looks like and how to solve it. Again, if you like the wall where the equal sign is, it does give you a left side and a right side. Okay, because we are going to get rid of the plus 8 first, because we have to do the add or subtract part first. To get rid of plus 8, we are going to subtract 8 on both sides. You never want to touch the letter or the number that's touching the letter until the very end. Right, so that's always a good way to know who to disconnect first. Right, so after I subtract 8, the 8's cancel out. I now have negative 6x equals, and 14 minus 8 is 6, not 8. Okay, and then to separate the negative 6 from the x, that's attached by multiplication. So I want to divide both sides, and I want to divide by the negative 6 to make it go away. Right, on the left-hand side, it's gone, and now I have x equals 6 divided by negative 6 is negative 1. Right, so you should be familiar with the process and the format of what these look like. Right, for the second one, if I have x over negative 2 minus 16 equals 31. This is still a two-step problem, it's just a different variety. Right? You still have to get rid of the add or subtract first. So since I have subtract 16, I'm going to add 16 over. Okay, and cancel them off. So now I have x divided by negative 2 equals 47. Okay, and because x is being divided by negative 2, if I want to undo this, I need to multiply by negative 2 to make it go away. That crosses off my negative 2's and leaves me with x equals negative 94 for an answer. Okay, so just make sure that you're using your operations and your signs correctly as you go through and solve these. All right, for the next one, some of them look like this. 12x minus 20x equals 128. Right, and this is not your normal looking two-step problem, but it is a two-step equation because it takes two operations to make this happen. Right? Instead of adding and subtracting first, right, you're going to have to combine like terms first. If you notice, this 12x and this minus 20x, they can go together. Right? So if I take 12 minus 20, I'm going to get negative 8x equals 128. So my first operation was to subtract, but it was to subtract the like terms together. All right, so now I'm going to divide by my negative 8 to solve it for x. And when you divide 128 by negative 8, you get x equals negative 16. So you do have to watch out for ones like this. So I'm going to put a little star beside number 3 and put on the outside that you need to simplify first. And that's what's going to give you your first step. All right, for another one, all right, fractions are going to show up just like they showed up before. So we have 3 minus 3/4 x equals negative 6. Right? Again, you want to move the number that is not directly attached to the variable, so that would be the 3. It's a positive 3 right now, so to get rid of it, I'm going to have to subtract 3 to the other side. Okay, so now I've got negative 3/4 x equals negative 9. Right? And if you recall from your one-step equation notes that in order to get rid of a fraction in front of a letter, we have to multiply by the reciprocal on both sides. So for negative 3/4, it's going to turn into 4/3. And you're going to multiply that on both sides. Okay, that crosses off our 4's and our negative 3's, so now I have x equals, and then on the other side I'm going to put a 1 under the negative 9, and I'm going to look at my signs first. I see that I have a negative and another negative, so negative times negative is positive, so I don't have to worry about those. But then I can shortcut my fractions before I multiply straight across. 3 goes into itself once, and 3 goes into 9 3 times. So if I do that little shortcut, I just saved myself a whole bunch of work. And now I can multiply across. 3 times 4 is going to give me 12. I don't need to put the 1 on the bottom because 12/1 is still 12. Right? So just recognize that you don't need that 1 there. All right, so over to the side of number 4, you want to put the little reminder to multiply by the reciprocal to get rid of fractions. Okay, that's something you're going to have to remember to do as you go through and solve these equations, because it's going to work for every single type that we do. All right, for the next one that we want to do, it's a special one, so give it 2 stars on the left-hand side. Right? And the reason I'm telling you that it's special is because it does not follow regular two-step rules. And you'll see why as soon as I show it to you. All right, so here's what it looks like. H minus 6 divided by 7 equals negative 10. Right? If you were to try and follow the regular two-step rules, we would have to add or subtract first. But if you notice, the minus 6 is trapped over top of the 7. We can't add or subtract first because the 7 is in our way. So in this type of problem, you have to get rid of the 7 before you can even attempt to touch the top. You got to free up the top. Right? So instead of adding and subtracting first, we're going to have to multiply to make the 7 go away, because right now it's divide by 7. So if you multiply both sides by 7, you'll see that the 7's are going to cross off, and now you have h minus 6 equals negative 70. So that's your first step. And then the second step, now you can move the minus 6 like you normally would by adding 6 over. Okay, so h equals, and negative 70 plus 6 is going to give you negative 64. So be very careful when it looks like that. If it looks like a fraction and things are trapped on top of a number, you have to get rid of the denominator first. Otherwise, it's not going to work in your favor. Right, now the last example I'm going to show you pertaining to two steps, right, is going to involve translating. So your directions are going to be to first translate the problem, then solve it. So it will start off in words, and then you will make it into an equation, and then you will solve it just like we were doing. All right, so here's the words. The quotient of a number and negative 2 added to negative 8 yields 10. All right, so let's start with the first part. Right? We want to write our equation first, and then we want to talk about how to solve it. Right? So take it one phrase at a time and one piece at a time to translate. So the quotient we know means to divide. So here's my division bar. Right? And we're dividing a number and negative 2. So whatever comes before the word and in your statement goes on top. Well, a number we don't know. That's where we put our variable. And negative 2, because it comes after the word and, that means it goes on the bottom. So there's the first part. So the quotient of a number and negative 2 added to plus, okay, negative 8. So you're going to have to use parentheses to keep the negative 8 together for right now. Yields means equals 10. All right, so that's what the original equation has translated into. Now, before we can start solving this, we need to do something. We need to get rid of these double signs right here, because you don't ever want to leave yourself with double signs in a problem to solve it. All right, so after getting rid of those double signs, I now have x divided by negative 2, a plus and a minus, make a minus sign for the 8 equals 10. And now I'm ready to do my two steps. So I'm going to get rid of minus 8 by adding 8 to both sides. And that gives me x divided by negative 2 equals 18. Because I've got division under my x, I need to multiply to get rid of it. So I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 2. Cross those off. And now I get x equals 18 times negative 2 is negative 36. Okay, so we just added another step into an equation, and we're going to keep doing that over the next couple types, is we're going to add one more thing each time. Okay, so stay up with me and make sure you're getting these easier ones, because it will make the longer ones that we get to a lot easier for you to do as well. Okay, so here's your two-step ones, and we'll practice some more in class with those.